Welcome everyone to these online sessions. And this November, that Taipei Performing Arts Center is organizing Camping Asia. In Camping Asia, we're going to invite and welcome 100 students, 150 students and teachers from different countries, including Japan, Korea, Singapore, Hong Kong, France, Austria, and Taiwan. They will engage with each other and also interact and also inspire each other. During the 2025 Camping Asia season, we are also providing you 5 shows, and today we are going to talk about one of them, Find Your Eyes, that will happen in November. And today we are very happy to have the creators and the director behind of it, Benji Reid, with us. Hi, Benji.
Hiya.
For people who are not familiar with you in Taiwan, can you tell us who you are and where are you now?
Who I am? I'm Benji Reid. I am 58 years old. I am a creative artist, a multidisciplinary artist, crossing over a number of art forms, which we'll talk about later. And I'm in Manchester.
Good. And this time in this show's Find Your Eyes, and we see from the introduction this about partly about photography. Can you tell us first about when did you encounter photography, and also why did you decide to use photography as your creative medium?
When did I encounter photography? I think I first got interested, or first time I took pictures intentionally would have been around about the birth of my second child about 19 years ago, but that was very brief. And then I became more interested and actually became fixated with photography round about 2011. When I lost my theatre company, I had a discarded camera that I would use to document my company, and I took that camera and I started to do kind of small portraits of my daughter, and then eventually self-portraits, and then eventually portraits of other people. And why did I choose that as a medium? Because that's part of my language and it's part of my lexicon. I'm interested in dance, I'm interested in storytelling, I'm interested in photography, and it made sense when the offer was made to bring them all together.
I see. This times we are seeing you have a very special title called Choreo Photoless. Can you tell us about
Yes.
what is this? Can you tell us about what is this idea, and how would you describe a choreo photolist?
Okay, so I round about 2017 or 2016, I met an artist called Jean Baptiste Mondino, who's a fantastic photographer, a photographer to all the stars. And we got into a conversation, and he encouraged me because I saw photography as separate from the rest of my practice. So when I say the rest of my practice, in terms of me being a theatre maker and a choreographer, and also writing at times, and I saw photography as a very separate entity. And he was like, "You should bring your photography into the other things that you are currently working with, and you should think about them, your whole creative practice holistically." So being a choreophotolist is me thinking about my whole practice as one. So I'm interested in creating captivating images that are underlined by a story or emotion. And I'm interested in choreography that can be captured in a single image. I'm very much interested in theatre and theatrical ideas also being presented in a single image. So when thinking about each of the forms from different points of view, whether it's photography, theatre, or dance or choreography, it's always about how can I create either a single image or a series of images, and how can I then create story and meaning with it. So I'm not interested in just how somebody will look, but really about what they've gone through. And for me, as a storyteller, as somebody that works within mental health and storytelling. It was about bringing all of them holistically together.
Wonderful. Just a reminder to our audience online, if you have any questions, feel free to type in the comment sections. And if we have time, we'll raise the questions to Benji later. So back to Benji's. And this time we have this work called Find Your Eyes. You will have one photographer and 3 dancers on stage to perform together.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the motivations and the ideas behind this work? How did you come up with these ideas for the work?
Yeah, so I'm going to leave some mystery. I don't want to explain too much because for me, it's really important that people come to see the work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't want to over-explain because I make the work so I don't have to explain.
Mm-hmm.
But I will just tell you about how it came about. Was I had been directing a show round about 2017. I can't really remember the time, but around about 2017. And the artistic director of Manchester International Festival was like, Benji, would you like to come back into theatre and make new theatre work? And I had been out of theatre for some time, and I was very clear that I didn't want to enter theatre again because I just had a very hard time. And I just kind of felt like I was no longer flourishing within that theatre space. And he was like, I told him, says, look, I'm really focused on my photography and I'm really pursuing this world, within choreophotolism. And he was like, well, what would happen if you brought your photography into the theatre space? What would that be? And that was a really interesting provocation. From then, that provocation grew into quite a long period of contemplating what would theatre be like if it was to sit holistically on stage alongside the other art forms that I really love. And over a number of years, which took me about maybe 2 to 3 years to really come up with a great concept and a great idea that I'd be able to hold it all. That's how kind of Find Your Eyes actually started to get birth. And then it took me another 2 years. So roughly about 4 to 5 years of thinking about it before the piece came together.
I see. So that's quite a long time for sure to contemplate and form that formations into fruitions that we were going to see in November on stage. Without telling us too much about the contents, which we invite everyone to come to join us in November in Taipei. Since you presented the shows on stage, what kind of reactions you have received from the audience that was surprising or unexpected to you?
I think the first time I performed it, because there was no material to promote the show, people came because it was me and because of the basic concept. What I realized was people were floored by the performance, and they were floored because they didn't know what to expect. So what I realized within the first week of performing, that people not knowing was also a very vital element of the show. That when people came through curiosity and an openness and a willingness to go on a journey, it was much better than us telling them, oh, well, you're going to see this and you're going to see that, because there's something about the piece unfolding in real time for the audience. And I realized that that was a vital element. And that's one reason why there's not a lot of material in advertising the show in terms of it's about this and loads of images and loads of videos, which I could have done because there are stunning images of the show, but then that would actually spoil it for the new viewers. And people have always said, I'm so glad I didn't know what to expect. So that's been probably one of the things that have really stayed with me.
So that's also what we hope for our audience in Taiwan, that you can come with an open mind so you can get surprised or get, I don't know, maybe get shocked or also get all kinds of emotions and reactions to it. In the information that we have so far, this work is about war photography, about the everyday war. Can you talk to us about what is that everyday war referred to you in the context of UK? Because probably not everyone's in Taiwan is familiar with the situation or the living environments in UK. So can you tell us about what is this everyday war refer to?
Okay, so I will give you an example that we have a new political party that is a far right party. And at the moment, they're very much kind of in the same ilk as Donald Trump. So they are interested in not only reducing immigration, but targeting people who are immigrants. They are charging people from immigrant backgrounds. They are targeting people that have been resident here for a number of years or for all of their lives. So we have a new system, and it's been part of the British history anyway, British colonial history, of underlying racism and underlying segregation and oppression of people of color. So within this world of racism and white supremacy, the black body or the brown body has been subject to many different forms of kind of abuse or or being attacked in one way or another, just even in the school systems or the health systems or the policing system. So when I say war photography, there I'm really talking more as a metaphor in terms of the psychological warfare that people of color have to go through in England. So even on an everyday, there is sometimes an over scrutinizing of the black body and the black psyche. So in that sense, the body is at war, the psyche is at war. So I can take a picture of somebody just every day who's of color, and I go, this person has suffered through having to go through war. You know, when we look at the internet and we see how many, you know, like with George Floyd, for instance, and we see this man literally being lynched on our mobile phones. And this is like an everyday occurrence where you will see somebody being stopped just because they're black and then being shot in their car. So it's that psychological warfare that I'm really referring to when I say war photography. So even though it's not about us being physically at war, it's about us being emotionally and psychologically at war.
Yeah, I think that's something that people in Taiwan can understand when it comes to like Black Lives Matter or all the things that you have talked about. Or in the Taiwan, we may have these tensions between local residents and migrations and migrants. So that's maybe something that people
Absolutely.
in Taiwan can relate to or think about a parallel structure in Taiwan to understand your context
Absolutely.
in this work. This
Yes.
time, we are talking about partly photography. When we see photography as individual, like everyday audience here, we see the image, the end products. But for you, maybe photography or photos carry more than just one image. What do they carry? And in your works, and what kind of emotion you want to portray through these photography?
I want the audience to come to that and they tell me. I have my understanding of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that I am always trying to explore the human condition. And I'm also talking about the universality of the human condition. So even though some of my subjects may be from the African descent or Caribbean descent, I'm talking about, most of the time, I'm talking about humanity. I'm talking about mental health. I'm talking about fragility. I'm talking about being lost. So often my work it speaks about the human condition in a universal sense, even if I'm being very specific with my subjects.
So of course, everyone can have different interpretations to the same image. Uh, and there are
Absolutely.
also
And that,
universal values that we can talk about as well. But is there
absolutely,
a
that's one
yeah,
reason. Sorry, just before you go on, that's one
yes.
reason why I don't want to impose too much of what I think,
Mm,
because also the beauty. So going back to one of your questions, no matter where I've been in the world, people have been completely moved. That's one of the things that has surprised me is the universality of the work. That because it's about the human condition and it's about emotion, you know, that no matter where we've gone in the world, whether it be Italy, whether it's London, whether it's Amsterdam, whether it's Abu Dhabi, people are moved by the work. So there is something universal that I'm speaking to. Um, but always people come away with something that they've held for themselves. And often people write to me weeks later going, this work has still stayed with me. I still think about X, Y, Z. I still think about this. So the fact that the work sits with people in a way in their heart or in their soul is one of the other things that that has surprised me about the show, and also something that I hold on to.
I think that would be great to appeal to audience in Taiwan for sure. Another element in Taiwan that we may not be familiar with in this piece is the ideas of Afrofuturism. Can you tell us a bit
Okay.
about that one? Because the people in Taiwan probably be very far away from that idea.
Yeah, so Afrofuturism was a phrase coined in the 70s, and I can't remember the guy who coined the phrase, but basically there was a lot of images of artists in spacesuits and people like Sun Ra, who was a real Afrofuturist. He's a jazz musician, but a lot of his work was always otherworldly. And he talked about living in Mars or from Saturn. And it was about the black body and the black psyche being portrayed in the future. Because in the 70s, there was not many images, if any at all, of black people in spacesuits, or going to space or living in the future. So Afrofuturism was a way in which we could see ourselves in the future being intergalactic, being occupying spaces that wasn't Earth. So in one sense, it was about being able for the black imagination to be seen within the world of space and astronauts and intergalactic. So that's where the word Afrofuturism comes from. It's an aspirational, it's a signal that we will survive this period of time and live in the future. Does that
Now
make
we,
sense?
yeah, of course, That's totally
Okay.
understandable to me. Um,
Yeah.
since we are talking about photography, from the information that I got, your creative process has evolved throughout the years. You were in street dance, and later on, you also have the theater companies at the theater maker. Now
Mhm.
you involve photography into this
Yeah.
creative process. What was the what was the evolution process, and how did those elements come into play over the years?
Well, the thing is, I had, so if you think about up until 40, I already had like a theatre practice, and I also had a long period in dance, because dance came first. From 7 till 22, I studied at a conservatoire. And then from 22 up until mid 40s was my theatre practice, and my theatre practice incorporated storytelling, puppetry, mime. So there was a number of languages that I studied within that 20-year period. And they were my foundation. Photography came last, but again, that was also quite isolated, because I was no longer practicing in the theatre. And obviously I wasn't dancing, because I stopped dancing at 22. So when I'm in my mid 40s, it's just me and my daughter and a camera and Instagram and Facebook. So I'd take pictures and put them out onto Facebook, take pictures, put them onto Instagram. So Instagram became my gallery, so to speak. And the photography became a revolutionary act, because in one sense, my photography was about freedom. It was about defiance and not being able to work within a framework of theatre or dance that needed lots of people in order to make it happen. You needed an audience, you needed a stage, you needed a producer, you needed marketing. There was a whole system that theatre kind of relies on in order to make it work. With photography, it was far more immediate. It means that I could take a picture in the afternoon, I could process it and have it out in the evening. So for me, the idea of the concept, the actual delivery, and I mean, concept, the making and delivery was a lot more succinct and a lot more refined, because what it meant was that I could work in a much more reduced way. So I didn't have to have lots of elements. I could work in a very finite way. So having that and developing that language was perfect, because once it actually came together, there was a conversation, and a very natural conversation, especially when I was offered to make work on a larger stage. Because once I got the stage, once I got the money to make the props, once I got the infrastructure, it was very natural for me, because I've been working interdisciplinary anyway. It was very natural for me to bring in the photography. What took me a long time was thinking about how I was going to introduce the photography.
Indeed, I think that's the beauty of this work, that it actually encompasses many different elements throughout your whole career in different stage.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Speaking of photography, since you are now uploading these photos on Facebook or Instagrams, and it's a faster process in comparisons, are there recent photos that you have taken that means particularly a lot to you, or any photos that are memorable to you, and what was it about?
So I encourage people to go onto my Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
and there is a picture called Surrender, where I'm sat on a rock and I have got a bowl over my head, and then just literally crunched up in a small space, and that's been taken in my front room. And for me, that was one of the clearest ideas of being able to explore isolation, depression, a sense of loneliness. And that was one of the first times I made an image, and it really spoke to me, and still continues to speak to me in a way. And it's called Surrender. And I love that piece because it's not trapped in a time period. It kind of is Afrofuturistic, but it also kind of covers mental health. And it's also made in a very small space in my front room, but it keeps on speaking to people as they visit. So if I was to say, if there was a singular image, that would be one. But then there's another image called Holding On to Daddy, which is a duet between myself and my daughter. And it's where she sat playing a game, and she has a rope wrapped around her, and I'm floating off through the window, or I'm floating towards the window with a helmet on. And that won a photography prize for mental health. So there's two pieces. One is called Surrender, and the other one is called Holding On to Daddy.
Since you have used all kinds of disciplines throughout your careers, are there any recurring elements or themes in those pieces of works throughout the years? Are there things that you continue to revisit, or there are different subjects that you continue to raise over the years?
Well, it's really funny, because now looking back on my career, the whole idea of mental health fragility, the whole idea of something beyond what you look like. So I'm very much interested in the human condition, and I'm very much interested in mental health and how that plays out in the imagination, and how that actually plays out within the body and the psyche. So if I was to say there something that I'm constantly coming back to, I would say that it's definitely mental health and the psyche.
I see. For everyone who is interested in Benji's Instagram account, it's Benji Reid, a whole word without any space, so you can check it out while we are having this discussions. And once again, a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions, please feel free to write them down in the comment section so we can raise them later. We talk about Afrofuturisms, and you also talk about mental health. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious about, how do you incorporate them into this struggles about mental health and futurism? Do you want to give people a prospect or a projections, or what kind of visions for them to think about mental health? Okay.
No, I want them to come and see the show.
Sure.
Because you will see, you will understand once you see. I hope that your audience is curious enough to come without their cameras, very clear that the show is not to be photographed. I'm very clear on that. But I really want them to come with curiosity, because a lot of the questions that you're asking are answered within the work.
I see. That's why I'm asking, because I'm curious. So I hope everyone is as curious as I am. So we'll come to see the work. Um, as a related questions, when you are taking photos, are there any props you like to use? That's the question from one of our audience.
Come and see the show.
Okay, once again, come to see the show.
But also as well, you can go on my Instagram and you can see what I play with. But it's really, I don't want. You see, this is the issue about doing a lot of interviews, is I don't want to explain the work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the work is so self-explanatory that I'm asking you to go in almost with an open mind and almost with hardly any information. I guarantee that the work will draw you in. That's one thing I can guarantee. But I don't want to go, oh, you can expect this and I'm using this. Come and see.
Mm-hmm. Another question from the audience. Obviously, this person has checked your Instagram already. He says that you have taken some great photos. Can you give us some tips regarding to compositions? How do you construct or build a great photo?
Well, I would say look at great paintings.
Mm-hmm.
I would say constantly study. The rule of thirds is something that is very clear, you know, how a grid is being broken up and where you place objects. So, you know, there is so much stuff on YouTube in terms of framing and storytelling and how you can use photography to tell storytelling. I would just say look at great paintings, look at classic paintings, look at classic photography, look at go and listen to photo essays in terms of people talking about photography. Look at great films. Stop a film halfway through and look at the framing and see why that frame works particularly well. Go back to your favorite films and look at it through a photographer's eyes. In other words, turn the sound down and just look at how it's being framed. Look at the cinematography. So there's so many great examples, even adverts, in terms of how adverts may have a central character, may have a character off to the side. Look at just, and adverts actually a really good example, because they have to tell a story pretty much in a single image, especially if it's a billboard. Look at how the composition works. There's lots of examples of good compositions all around you.
That's a great question as well from the audience. Have you been to Taiwan before?
No.
Okay, we look forward to see you in Taiwan in November.
I am so looking forward to it.
There's also related questions. So when you travel to a different countries within the different cultures, what other things that you pay additional attention to when you travel? What interests you the most?
Really good question. I pay attention to food. I pay attention to custom. I pay attention to architecture. I pay attention to light. I pay attention to the air. I pay attention to color. I pay attention to fashion. I pay attention to the heat. I pay attention to the view from my hotel room. 10 things.
That's a lot that you absorb and also take notice to all the time, obviously.
I am, as an artist, as a photographer, I'm constantly absorbing. I'm listening. I like to go into restaurants and I like to see how people are served, and I like to see how locals are served. I like to see how what people's customs are. I like to listen to people's rhythms. How fast do they walk? How slow do they walk? How do they treat their elders? Are elders being, I am constantly being not necessarily a voyeur, but I am constantly looking and seeing, because that's what a photographer does. That's what an artist does, is that they see and they examine, and they may take something and go, oh, I really love that composition, or I really love that custom, or I really love how that person dresses, or I really like this type of music. So I'm constantly being aware of being in another space, because I don't take it for granted that I'm going to be going to Taipei, So when I go there, I am in the deepest gratitude of being there. So I'm taking everything in. I try to go with an open mind.
I hope you can when you come to Taiwan. Uh, there's a question from the audience that you mentioned about what's your favorite movie again, and try to learn about framings and compositions and stop halfway through. So they're asking like which movie would be most memorable to you regarding to framings or images and photography in total.
There's a load. But the one from the top of my head would be Raging Bull. Would be one. Delicatessen would be another. Mon Uncle, M-O-N, Uncle, Mon Uncle would be another. Do the Right Thing would be another.
Yeah.
The Lighthouse would be another. Taxi Driver would be another. Let me think of Old Boy.
Yeah.
The Korean version, not the American version. Old Boy would be another. So yeah, I mean, I could just keep going. Rear View, which Alfred Hitchcock would be another. Yes. So there's just loads.
Good. Another question is about traveling. Do you travel with your cameras?
Yes, I travel with. Just 1 second. Can you see? You can see me, yeah?
Yes, of course.
Can they see me?
Yes. Everyone can see you with this background, very colorful background.
So this is my Kaiwa 6.
Oh wow!
This is a film camera. So this is one that I was working with when I was in Abu Dhabi, because the light was so amazing. So I will take this film camera, or I might take this camera, which is my Hasselblad, which is another film camera. So it all just depends on how light or heavy I want to travel. And then I will obviously travel with my other 2 digital cameras. Just give me 1 second. I'll just show you that.
Sure. So while Benji is taking his cameras, just a reminder to everyone in Taiwan that the show will happen on November 15 and 16 in Taipei Performing Arts Center. And the tickets are on sale already. And this time we'll get to see Find Your Eyes from Benji Reid.
So this is my digital camera set up for my show. And this is my backup digital camera. So I have 2 on stage. One is my backup and one is my main camera.
So these are the 2 you're using on stage?
I use, this is my main camera, but if anything happens, I have a backup camera.
I see.
Yeah. So this is like the top of the range Canon R5. So this is a fantastic camera. So yeah, I travel with a number of cameras. I travel with digital and I travel with film.
Another question is about the theater piece that we are seeing this time. in your work it talks about universal values and humanities in general, but when you present this work in different countries or different cultures, do you think that different cultural backgrounds or cultural differences create different kind of chemistry with this work?
Yes, yes, because people come with their own histories.
Mm-hmm.
So people are always going to come with their understanding of custom, and they're going to bring that to the theatre spaces. So yes, there are always going to be slight differences in how people may take the work, because the work is very personal.
I see.
I can't say any more than that, really.
Another question from the audience is about what would you say to people who are experiencing everyday war themselves? And another question is, what would you say to fellow creators on this creative journey?
Okay, so for people that are going through the war, I ask them to write poetry, to create stuff in and around their feelings, to find somebody that they can speak to about it. So one is to have a creative outlet, because when you have a creative outlet, it's like having a conversation with yourself. When you make the work, when you bring these feelings into your work, it's about having that space where these emotions can find a place. So rather than keeping them bottled up and allowing them to go around in you, you're finding the creative spaces in which you can then deposit some of these feelings. And on the mental health side, always find somebody that you can speak to, where you can start talking about trauma and pain, because it's really important that you find somebody that you can untangle these feelings.
Yep.
In terms of artists and the creative process, you have to do, and you have to do it every day. Make work every day. Find it, and it can be very small. It can be writing a few words. It can be taking a photograph. It can be painting. But do something as an everyday practice, not because you want it to be seen, but because you want it to go through your body. You know, a lot of the times people want the results, but if they don't put in the work, they won't get the results. And often when you're making work, you're not making it for a result. You're making it so that you can exercise a feeling, that you can exercise an idea. And after a while, when your work becomes an everyday practice like meditation, it will improve, it will become more refined. And you have to become very humble to the process of making work. There is a thing called beginner's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And what that really means is that no matter how long you've been practicing, if you go with a sense of the beginner's mind, it means that you don't have any great expectations of being amazing. You are just going, I am humble to the process, and every day is a space where I get to learn. Even today, like when I finish this, I'm going to go back into the studio and I'm going to be experimenting and I'm going to be practicing, and hopefully I'll make a new discovery today. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly putting myself through the paces. And I do have days or weeks where I'm very quiet, and then I have days where I'm super productive. So for me, it's about, and for young artists, be humble to the process. Yeah, be open to your art taking you into new directions. So that's the practice. And then the theory is making sure you study, make sure that you look at a lot of work, make sure that you are reading up, that you have a sense of what has gone before you, so that you have an understanding of the language and the canon in which you're working in.
I think for many creators, they often have been through that kind of loop that you feel creative at the same at this in certain days, and in certain days you have a lot of hesitation and self doubt. How do you break that
Yeah.
loops in your experience?
So the reality of it is, is a lot of times people want to make work because they feel like it. And often you can push past that, because if I feel like it means that I go on and off, on and off. But if I'm actually dedicated and disciplined, I'm going to practice every day. So sometimes on the days that I don't feel like practicing, don't feel like making art, I will figure something that I can practice on. What is it I want to work on today? So constantly giving yourself tasks is a wonderful way of breaking through that feeling. And what happens once you give yourself a task and you go, right, okay, I'm going to take 10 pictures today. By your third picture, you're already back into it. You're like, great, I'm ready to go. I'm already back into it. So often don't rely on what you feel like, but be disciplined to turn up for yourself every day. Now, that's a real hard one, but that's the key, is making work even when you don't feel like it, practicing when you don't feel like it. And that's the discipline, because a lot of people don't realize that just like anything else, if you do something every day and you're putting in your 10,000 hours, you are bound to improve. And if you're doing 10,000 hours of clear, focused practice and you're doing your theory, you're bound to improve. So that's sometimes where you have to be really strict with yourself and go, I dedicate X amount of time each day to my practice. And if it isn't each day, it's every other day. But it's much easier to do it each day, even if it's a little bit, because you find that if you give yourself the space to do 5 minutes, that 5 minutes turns into 15 minutes super quick. And then before you know it, you've already done an hour and you're like, oh, wow, I've already done my hour's practice. Cool. I'm on to something else. And when you say practice, you could open a book and go, I really love the color that they're using. I really love the lighting. I really love how they've blocked that scene. I'm going to figure out how I can do something similar, not the same, but something similar. That can be a practice. So always find things that you can go, this is what I want to improve on this week. This is what I want to look at this week.
I think the last questions I may have is that now you're working on photography. Have you thought about working on moving images?
Yes, I have. And the only reason why I've not made I've made a short film. If you go on my website and you go onto, there's a short film page, you will see a short film that I've made on my website. So please go to benjireid.com. And on one of the tabs, you'll see short films, and you'll see a short film that I've made. I would make another film if I knew there was a budget, because the ideas are never the problem. But the thing is, I don't want to make a film for the sake of making a film. I want to make a film because it's going to be seen. So I have reserved the right to kind of go full out into the film world, just because it's a massive mechanism and you need quite a number of things to align before you can make a film.
Understood. So I think we have covered many grounds today. Before we go, so are there any things you still want to mention to us, to the audience, before we invite them to come to the theater?
No, my thing would be, please to come to the theater with a friend. Come with open art, put your cameras away, and be with me for an hour and a half as this show unfolds. So that's my offer to you guys, is that I would love you to come and witness this immersive piece.
Good. So once again, to everyone's in Taiwan, the show will happen. Find Your Eyes will happen in November on the 15th and 16th in Taipei. Thank you, Benji. Thank you for your times. And I think everyone can learn something. I hope everyone can get curious about this work and come to join us in November in Taipei. So thank you. Thank you, Benji. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Take care. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.